Hi, I'm Danielle Gallant with Guardian Realty. We've gone over a two-part session so far with evictions, and today we're going to wrap it up with what if the tenant files an answer and you have to go to court? What should you do? So, tenant files an answer. The courts will give you a court date, and a couple scenarios can happen in court. But before you go to court, I suggest that you have 3 copies of the ledger, you have 3 copies of recent work orders completed, as well as the lease agreement, and also a nice summary, and I call it a cheat sheet, where it has each of the charges that have not been paid in a nice, neat, snapshot, sort of wrapping it in a bow. It makes it easier for the judge to understand what the tenant owes instead of having to go through the entire ledger. So today's court date, let's say, and the tenant doesn't show up. The judge will automatically grant the eviction, and then we file the lockout. That's easy scenario. Let's say the tenant shows up, and sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes the tenant will just have keys and hand it to you right there in front of the judge. The judge will not grant the eviction. You now have possession of the property, and the tenant gets to go, unfortunately, without paying the balance and with no eviction on their record. Or sometimes the tenant will have the money, and then they can remain in the property, and you're able to get the rent. A lot of times, if it is falling towards the next month, the judge will also ask for the tenant to pay the current month, or at least give a date when they can pay that, and if they don't, then the judge a lot of times will grant the eviction. Other times we'll create a payment plan, and the courts will support that, so if at any point the tenant falls short on the payment plan, when I call the court, they will then grant the eviction. So those are some overall scenarios that happen. I do find that when I go to court, and I've been doing this for about 7 or 8 years now, that in the beginning it felt like a zero-sum game and like I needed to win. And I was having trouble having the judges rule favorably or at least fairly between me and the tenant. So I started to go to court and watch how the pros do it, and I realized that I needed to change my approach. So judges don't want to see that you're being vindictive or punitive in any way. So at any point that I have an opportunity to strike a deal and come up with some type of payment plan, that is good for relations between the tenant, and it's good for relations between the judge and I, because he can see that I'm reasonable, I don't want to make somebody homeless, and I'm open to other solutions to the current problem that we're dealing with. The other thing that it helps is that there are going to be times the tenants will lie, like I called in a work order, they didn't fix this, or they refused my money, or they never answer their phones. And over the years, since the judge has been able to get to know me and see that I'm reasonable, responsible, and benevolent and not punitive, many times he will not believe what the tenant is saying and understand that they're just trying to get out of paying rent, or they're angry. And he sort of sees through that, so that his rulings tend to be fair and balanced for both parties in which the law will allow. So I hope you enjoyed this video and got to know a little bit more about what actually happens in court. If you have any questions or property management needs, please feel free to contact me at the information below. Thanks so much and have a great day.